should work. Okay, so it says it's sending data. So hopefully Facebook will be joining us soon. And the wool sale is something that I do the last Saturday of the month, unless there's something in the way. And for November, there is. It's Thanksgiving. So it's going to be the Saturday before that. I think I said Sunday. It's on Saturday. Whenever you're confused on when something is, head over to howtorughook.com and look at the dashboard. My collar looks really funky. I look like that guy in the commercial. It didn't look like that earlier. Oh, because I'm backwards. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I get distracted by the littlest thing. And the wool sale is the last Saturday of the month generally. And people call it an auction, but it's not really an auction. I think the closest thing you could link it to is more like a lottery, because if I have a limited supply of something, I do like a random number generator to determine who gets to buy it. So, but the price doesn't keep going up and up and up. And I've been telling Kim we could probably make a lot more money if we did that, but that's not the purpose of this. The purpose is to get some good wool in your hands, and hopefully we did that. Heather says it's sunny and mild here on Vancouver Island. And Donna says hello from sunny and warm Alberta. Outback Sue is from North Carolina. It's a blustery day. And Cynthia says it's chilly and rainy in Front Royal, Virginia. April says hello. And overlooking the back and forth chit chat, you guys can have conversations there. That's fine. Noof says hello from northern Michigan. And Jan says, finally some sun in Virginia after Zeta rained through. And Pamela is here from Oregon. So welcome. Joan is here. She says it's snowing in Plymouth, Massachusetts. See, if I had been a pilgrim and it was snowing and I stepped off the boat, I think I'd get back on the boat, turn around, go back. I don't like snow. I don't like snow. At this point, it's like from the first snowfall until you can feel that warmth on your shoulders again. I like hold my breath, I think, the entire time. I am not good with snow. Linda's here and she says hello. Kim says, cool with light snow coming later tonight in Maine. Yeah, my husband said he heard talk that we're supposed to get snow this weekend. So I don't know. Sharon says she's in southern Indiana and it's a beautiful day there. All I can say is I hope my friend Kim gets her furnace fixed because her furnace is out. I haven't checked with her today, but yesterday it was not doing good. Okay, so if you've asked a question, hopefully you've put 2 question marks in front of it. If you kind of follow along with me in the comments and you notice that I skip you, then feel free to ask it again, but please don't ask your questions twice unless I've skipped you, okay? And you can tell that by watching me through the comments. But no, you can't, because if you're on Facebook, you can't see the YouTube comments, okay? I see them both together in their timestamp so I can see whatever comes up first. But let's get started with today. So Jerry is asking, she goes, no doubt it's too early to really know, but with ATHA canceling their biennial, I worry about solder. 2 women in my guild are speaking at solder and have contracts to sign. No hint yet. Well, Jerry, that perfectly ties in with my announcement for today. We are now free to announce that I am teaching at solder again this year. So if you've been thinking about coming next year, this August is a huge blowout. It's a 25th anniversary, so that's something big to celebrate. Plus, we didn't get to go last year, right? So, yeah, I signed a contract, sent it back. I'm under contract. I am working as if it is happening. Now, there are 2 different kinds of organizations behind the 2 events. Sauder is a professional. This is their thing. This is what they do. And we have Kathy Wright, who's like a super organizer who can really handle these events and make it happen. ATHA is held by volunteers who've never done it before. I know because I was in a guild and we did that in 2004. We were that set of volunteers in Dearborn, Michigan, who didn't know what we were doing. But every year it's in a different place. And every year the ATHA people, they don't know what they're doing, but they always figure it out wonderfully. So I can understand if I was looking at volunteers, ooh, that's a big event to put on when you can't get everybody's help and cooperation, even in a small way. Yeah, I think I would back out if I was leading a group who was doing that. Sauder, we'll just continue forward as if it's going to happen, and hopefully we don't have to cancel it again, right? I just look at history. I look at 1918, and yeah, it was a different virus, but they didn't know what caused it. They didn't know what caused someone to catch it. We've got a lot more science behind us, and we've got some things to treat it, and, let's just continue on as if it is, and we'll see what happens after that. Because I refuse to live in a world where there is no hope. Okay, I'm looking for comments with question marks. Elizabeth doesn't have question marks on this one, but she put them on the next one. She says, can you expound on balancing packing and holidays? Well, I can tell you that every new rug hooker packs. Every single one. And the true test to see if you pack is a pretty simple test. And what you do is let me get rid of these comments and get rid of that. What you do is you look at your work from the side. That'll work. If this is your backing, and you come in with your loops and you're pulling them high enough. Another symptom of packing is that the loops are not pulled high enough, and they just come up and they just do this, and they tend to pack that way. So pull them up so that they bloom, so that you get this thickness right here in the middle of the loop. And then you got another one. But if you start to see them doing this, you don't have enough space in between them. Just take and sort of draw an imaginary line through your loops. You want them all standing straight up and down, nice and tall. If they're leaning, the end of that row is leaning, you're packing. Put them a little bit further apart. Holidays, on the other hand, are something that you look for. What do I have hooked handy close by? I know on some of these rugs, I left holidays on purpose. The problem is now I can't what rugs I left them in. This one might. And nothing obvious that's sticking out. But this is the back of the rug. And what you're looking for is a place that is bigger than normal. And right now I'm not spotting any that are bigger than average. And your average and my average could be very different because it depends on the cut size. It depends on our style and method of hooking. It depends on a lot of stuff. So what we're looking for is what is average for you. And if you see a spot that is bigger than average, then I mark it and I fill those in. There is information on that somewhere on the internet that I did a video on. Not sure if it's it might be in the rug hooking journey. And I am going to make sure that the basics lesson has a lesson on holidays. So I will find that video and post it inside the rug hooking journey in the basics. so that you can find it a little bit easier there. So you don't have to search the same way I do. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. Elizabeth says, are there different ways and techniques to outline? Well, Elizabeth, I wish this was an office call so that you could come online and talk to me about this, because I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but I'm going to guess. You could do wide cut outline. You could do thin cut or small cut outline. You could do what I call a double outline, meaning I'll outline, let's say I've got a really big flower and it's got a petal that's like this big. That's too big in my world for one wool. So I'll outline it and then maybe outline it again in another color before I do any kind of filling, probably with a plaid. Because my rule of thumb is the bigger it is, the more it needs a big plaid to fill up the space to keep it interesting. You can hook so that it's a normal row of hooking, or you can hook an outline where you space them quite a big difference, so that they're almost like dots going around. That might be a technique. Beyond that, I'm not sure. So, Elizabeth, if you've got more to ask about that, ask it again and put your question marks in front of it, please. Heather says, can you remarry wool that you married before with different wool? Sure. Now, every time you put that wool in the hot water, it's going to shrink a little bit more. But what happens, let me see if I can get this framed up right. If this is a yard of wool, I'm looking, it's backwards, and it's not backwards like a mirror backwards, so it's backwards a weird way, and it's hard for me to figure this out. So when you have wool that you wash the first time or dye it, it's going to shrink this much, okay? The next time it's going to shrink this much. Then it's going to shrink like this, and then it continues to shrink, but each time it shrinks a little bit less proportionately. Does that make sense? So yeah, you can do it again. Can you cook it to the point where it's overdone? Yeah, you can turn some wools into seersucker, and some wools are prone to that. You can wash them very gently in warm water and they'll seersucker, which is why I always start with cold, by the way. Sally is saying, I see how to sort values with your wool, but I have lots of other wools and I don't know how to sort them with values. Any hints? What's different about the other wools though, Sally? I'm not sure. One tip would be to, if you're not sure where it fits in the scale, and this will come with training. It really does. The more you do that, the more you'll see it. And I'll do things like, I see one thing right now I want to fix. Okay, see this piece of wool right here? See how that sticks out? It's too light to be there. And I probably just got lazy and put it there. But what I'll do, and this actually probably needs to go down in the browns, but let's keep it in the greens. But what I'll do is when I'm putting stuff away, is I kind of walk along until I go, okay, see, it's starting to fit in, maybe like right in through here. And that's where I'll put it on the shelf. And now it disappears and you almost can't see it, right? That's when you know you got the value right. Okay, it's all about getting the values right, and it's all relative. I can't say this wool is a number 9 because there's no such thing. I mean, there is in painting and that type of thing, but with wool, it's so much more subjective, and it has to do with the balance of your stash. You might not be a person who likes the super dark. So you don't have anything that's way off the end of the grayscale, but you have a lot more in the light values, but you still need to kind of sort them through so that you know where they stand. Sally, I hope that helps. If it doesn't, let's talk about that tomorrow. Sally's part of the VOW, the virtual online workshops that I hold. And that gives you a chance to kind of get a little bit more in depth with some of these questions with me. Andrea says, are your labels archival? As the ink from printer is water soluble, if your rugs get wet, won't the text run? They don't. And I don't know if it's the chemical they put into it, but I don't think the ink from the printer is that water soluble, because the tests I did is I printed, and this was years ago, I printed some with no treatment, and then I printed some with, what was I using at the time? Bubble inkjet set, bubble jet set, maybe bubble jet. It was from Prochem, whatever their product is. And part of what the process is you would print it through on freezer paper, peel it off, rinse it, and I did the same to one as I did to the other, because the instructions for the bubble jet set is to rinse it. So I rinsed them both, and it didn't come out. Dried it, ironed them, and then put them out to see which one would fade, and the one without treatment faded. So it's not so much that it washes out, it's that the light fades it and it disappears, and all of a sudden it's not there. So you want something that's going to lock in that ink so it doesn't fade away to nothing. Gabriella says, is it better to fill with stuff or cardstock on a 3D rug cooking Christmas ornaments? So means, is it better to fill with stuffing or cardstock? But cardstock's like a cardboard sheet. Like Santa or Christmas tree or other recommendations. I would not use cardstock unless you know 100% it's acid free. Okay? If it's not acid free, that deterioration is going to deteriorate your fibers faster. So I don't put any of that stuff anywhere near. That's why I don't use glues or any of that kind of stuff. Unless I'm doing a pin. Those are throwaway projects, even though some are cherished possessions of mine, but they're little tiny projects. They didn't take a whole lot of time or a whole lot of money. But when it comes to something bigger, then I just sew, and it's not hard. And if you don't know how, there's somebody in your circle somewhere who will show you. You just got to ask or Google it. Shoot, you can learn anything. I learned how to knit by watching videos. What kind of videos were they? Shoot, this was so long ago. No, it was books. I guess it wasn't a video. It was a book. It had to have been, because I was young. And YouTube didn't start till 2003. Can you believe it's only been that long that we've had YouTube? But you can learn anything from the internet. So if you need to sew or you need to figure out something, go to YouTube, figure it out. I'm looking for comments with double question marks. Denise says, when attaching hooking to a wooden door stop, do you have a glue or method you recommend? It depends. What do you fill? What is a wooden doorstop? Okay, I'm thinking brick, because most of the door stops I've seen are bricks, and you basically just sew a covering and you sew it around the brick. Is it just like applied to like a wedge of wood? You know, like an OFET? Denise, you're going to have to give me more information on that one, because I can't visualize what you're asking me. Linda says, I would like you to talk about using different cuts in the same rug. I think not only is it okay, I think it's necessary. I think when you're using all one cut, it's kind of like using all one color to fill a motif. It's boring. It's boring. The different wool, when you cut it different widths, it looks different. So you can change something just by changing the width. So I think it's absolutely necessary to use multiple cut sizes. Now, the one time it bugs me is when somebody's got some kind of a picture, say with 2 kids, and everything is done in number 8s. And for some reason, they thought they couldn't hook a face in an 8. You absolutely can hook a face in an 8, depending on the size. Not one this big, but if it's only this big, you're not hooking the rest of the rug in an 8 either, right? It usually goes hand in hand. Don't stray too far and then put all of one cut side only in one place, because then it looks odd. But yeah, mix them up. I mix them up my background on purpose. I start out with wide cuts, and then as those jigsaw puzzle pieces are getting smaller and smaller, I use a slightly smaller cut size. Makes my life easier. Elizabeth says, I am going to solder. What will you teach? Well, I have to pick a topic, which I hate. I like teaching an open class where you just bring whatever it is you want to hook, and I'll help you with whatever it is. So for the brochures and for the website, I have to pick a topic. So what I picked was creating depth in your rugs. A sense of 3D, how, to do that with either value or do it with the temperature of the color, doing it with cut size. There's a lot of different tricks you can use to create depth, and you can do that in a landscape. You can do that in a floral. You can do it in a primitive. You can do it in a geometric. You can do it in whatever rug you want. So that's the cool thing. And, that's what I'm teaching. So again, it's back to whatever you want to hook. Ellen says, your tip of backing out of graphic helped, but how do I import a second photo into a layer? Okay, so what Ellen was asking about was, how do I create a second image? And let me go. Let's do a little quickie little mini graphic lesson without getting into it too deep. We'll do just enough that this is the image that I just created. If you click back, you have an option to save it or don't save. I'm going to save it. And my image is here. The problem is it takes a while. It'll eventually show up here on this, because if I back out, see how the images show up in here? But for whatever reason, now I gotta remember what folder that was. Here we go. I think it's not that one, but that's okay. So when you've got an image, I always recommend putting image on their own layer. So here's the images, and you create an image by clicking the little plus sign here, and you can make as many as you want. But remember, they're layers. So the one at the bottom is going to be at the bottom of the stack, and then they'll move their way up. So you almost always want to put your layer on the lower level and then work your way up from there. Now, you would click on photos, and I'm going to click on this one because I'm going to talk about this poppy. And that's how you put it on a layer. Now, if you don't want this image, and maybe you want something else, you can use the eyeball to turn it off, come to another layer, grab another image, and let's bring in the finished version. There it is. And then we can turn that off. And you can do that over and over. And what I like is that I can draw, say, on layer 3. I'll get my pencil. You can draw here on layer 3, and then you can draw on layer 4, but you can turn off just one if you keep them on separate layers. So that's why layers are important. So that's confusing as heck if you've never used Graphic before. So what I want to announce is it's time for a graphic lesson, guys. And I'm going to do it really quick. I'm going to do it Monday. Yes, this Monday coming up. If I get enough people who sign up for it. And for me, enough is going to be 2. As long as 2 of you sign up for it. So it's going to be November 2nd at Where's the time I picked? I think I picked the same time as always. At 4 o'clock, yes. So 4 o'clock on Monday, I'm going to be doing a graphic lesson. Now, I don't even have the place where you sign up for it yet. I'll do that tonight or first thing tomorrow morning. And if you've signed up for my wait list, I will send you the email of where you can sign up. I'm going to keep this first lesson very cheap. It's going to be about a 2-hour lesson for $59. So if you want a heads up, you can figure all this stuff out yourself. All you have to do is open up all the little things that Graphic sends you that's included with the download. But if you don't want to mess with that and you want to know just what you want to know for designing rug patterns, that's what I'm going to cover. I'm not going to cover a whole lot of other stuff that Graphic can do. I'm going to cover just the part that I use to actually create rug hooking patterns. And if you want to join me on that, it'll be Monday at 4 p.m. It'll be a Zoom lesson. So I'll be able to share my screen, and you can follow along with your iPad if you've got it handy. Now, if you haven't signed up for it on the wait list and you're like, wait a second, what's that? And if you're interested, just send me an email. I'll check the emails before I send out the notice on where you go to pay for it. Okay, so graphic lesson on Monday for those of you who've been waiting. I'll do it again, but I wanted to get one done, and then we'll see how it goes, see if 2 hours is enough. If it's not, we'll fix it. We'll get you covered. You'll get everything you need. And then I'll offer it again with all those improvements. Okay. The other thing is I put this vest on for a purpose. You saw this vest on Tuesday, I think. Okay. And we talked about setting up a color palette. And I thought when I grabbed it, it's like, I forgot to talk about using a plaid wool for the basis of your color palette. You could pick something like this and then buy wools that coordinate with it. They don't have to match. They just need to coordinate. And that's a handy way of creating your palette. And I forgot to mention that the other day when we talked about using palettes. Jan is asking, what will your solder class be? And I think I answered that. It's basically how to create depth in your rugs. Amanda says, how do you use a lap frame? Well, it's going to depend on the lap frame, but I will tell you, I am not a big fan of lap frames. But you can take almost any frame and put it on a floor stand. Unfortunately, the floor stands that I sell has sold out. I will be getting more in, and they work with almost every frame. Ideally, you want something that has sitting on the floor. There's a lot of shoulder, lower back, calf issues with having it on your lap because you're like raising on your toes and you're sitting funny and you're trying to hold on to it. Your body's just doing a whole lot that it doesn't do when you're sitting at a floor stand. So I recommend a floor stand. The frames that I'm recommending currently, because the one I use, I don't know if I have one handy. Well, here's one. This is a Puritan frame, and it's an oldie but goodie. If you see it anywhere, probably for under $200, I would buy it. The only condition is you want to know what shape the grippers are in. It costs about $60 to replace the grippers. But when it's on your lap, like for me, if I'm relaxed, it's sliding off of my lap. So what I end up doing is this. I go up on my tippy toes. That's not good for the backs of my legs. So a lot of people will compensate by putting, the most clever I saw was a plastic shoebox. Put a plastic shoebox under there, and then all your hooking stuff is in the shoebox. except then you got to move it to get stuff out, or have a little footstool. I don't like the fact that it's not secured. So when it's on my stand, it's, for one thing, it's a little higher. I find this way too low. And what I do then is I bend my head. And when you bend your head like this, that is not good. That is going to give you all kinds of neck issues. You want your stand nice and high. I put my stand about this high, and then I hook from there. It's more comfortable for me. My shoulders aren't doing weird things. I'm not hunkering down to get my arm underneath the frame because it's so low. Yeah, there's just a lot of good things to be said for a floor stand. And that's definitely where I would go. What method do I use to hang rugs? Okay, there's a really, really old YouTube video. I think when I got my first iPhone, I think I used it to film a video. And it's me putting up the Village of Pemberville on its holding rack, for lack of a better word. I'm uncomfortable with hanging a rug from just a rod or from just the top, using whatever method you do, because that's a lot of weight on those fibers. What I like about the carpet tack strips is that you can put them at the midpoint and point them up, and it'll support the rug all the way through. So go to YouTube, do Cindy Gay rug hooking wall, or hang, the word hang. And that'll probably bring that video up, and you'll be able to see that, because a picture's worth 100 words, that's for sure. Jan says, did you make your vest? No, I did not. Do you have a rug you've hooked with that wool? No, I haven't. I don't even think this is actually wool. I think it's something else. But it was cozy. It's from Bass Pro, of all places. And it was this party, and I was cold that day, and it was like, oh, I need that. And it was on sale. The stars came together, and that's the way it... But would I hook with this if I had this in... You betcha I would use it all day long. But unfortunately, no, it's not a wool. Elizabeth says, with regard to my question on outlining, it has to do with my leaf rug. I am using a 3-cut for the outline between 5 cuts for background and leaves. I'm using a 3-cut for the outline. I'm going in afterwards and going between the 5s. That works. If I envision what you're saying is you've got the whole rug hooked in 5s and you're coming back in between and sticking in a 3 for whatever reason. If you need the outline to define the leaf, then the leaf color or the background color is wrong. Okay? An outline isn't going to save your rug necessarily. I don't know how far into that rug you are, but yeah, you really need to make those colors work without an outline, because there's no outline in nature unless you're doing a graphic, sort of a cartoony kind of style. And Donna says she loves the vest. Did I make it? Is there a pattern? I didn't, but I will confess that I bought it with the idea of making another one using this as a pattern. So I haven't done that yet. Nancy says, please explain. I start with cold. Do you mean with felting? When I'm washing wool, I start with cold water, and I never wash a wool that I don't know with warm or hot water. I always wash it with cold, because a lot of times cold is all it needs. And if it's not enough felting, I can then up the temperature and go to warm and wash it again. If I wash it on warm or wash it on hot, I can't reverse the process. I can't undo it. It's gone, and I've lost that wool. So I always start with cold. Michelle says, what's the best project for a newbie. Okay. One place to start, let me get over to, or let me just try Cindy Gay Beginner Square. Okay, and I'm going to share my screen. Not sure which screen it's going to catch. Yeah, it probably won't be a problem. Let me pick primary. No, tertiary. Here we go. So I just did Cindy Gay Beginner Square, and this is the project that I recommend for rug hookers to get started. I'll sell a kit from time to time for this. It's basically 4 squares. They're 3-inch squares, so it's a 6 by 6 inch project, and you can do it, and I think it's all described here. And here's some that some other people have hooked. It's a great project. It takes about 2.5 ounces of rug hooking noodles. So if you have a hooking friend who's willing to help you, what I do is I will start a new rug hooker and I'll sit them down with my noodle basket and I tell them, you got to pick out a pile about this big. And they always pick out too little. And I'll say, well, measure it. You need about 2.5 ounces of wool. And once they get that, that's enough to hook that 6-inch by 6-inch square. And what I like about it is that you're not trying to make something look like something. You are just hooking lines. You're hooking in all directions. So ideally, you learn to hook in all directions. You're not spinning your frame. You are hooking with different cut sizes because you're digging out of my noodle bin. You're using some textures. You're using some solids. And you get a chance to see what those look like and feel like. That is the best project for a newbie. I don't know if I have hooks. I used to put hooks in the kit, Michelle, but if you're interested in just the backing and the yarn, get in touch with me. I can set you up. Denise says the wooden doorstop is a wooden cutout in the shape of your rug hooking. Think cat shape wooden cutout and cat hooked in the same. Oh, so it's a dummy board. Right? It's a dummy board. I would just be sure, I don't remember exactly what your original question was. I wouldn't glue it. I mean, you can if you want. You can do anything you want with your own hooking. I would never glue it. I would be sure to completely paint that wood in a couple of coats of paint so it's thoroughly sealed front and back. And I would staple it. Deanne Fitzpatrick staples all of her stuff to wooden frames. And you just kind of make a little place in there, get in there with the big old stapler and just clunk, staple it and boom, you're done. Super fast, super easy, and certainly more reversible than what glue would be. And glue is not wood. Gluing wool, which is fuzzy, to something solid doesn't always work. The wool always ends up falling off. So that would be a problem. I would simply staple it. Okay, so Debbie Wharton and Magbus send me emails because when I'm done with this comment stuff goes away and I don't see it. So send me emails. April is saying, do you have tweed or herringbone that would look like gravel for a path? Well, gravel is so many different colors. What I would recommend is that you hook whatever you have in a texture sampler. Texture sampler, oh, I still have it out. A texture sampler is like this, where you've got a piece of the wool hooked and then a flat piece put next to it. If you have ones that you think might work and even ones you think won't work, hook them up and look through that. You probably have something on your shelf. The biggest question is going to be what value do you want and how many values do you want? Are there going to be shadows? in this gravel path? Are there trees casting shadow? How cool would it be to look down a gravel path with tree shadows going across it? You can do that. So you've got value to deal with. You've got, is it more gray? Is it more brown? Is it more red? Depends on what part of the country you're in. Not all gravel is the same color. I had that argument with a student once, and she says it's concrete. I'm like, okay, well, what color is your concrete? Because I had noticed when I pulled up to the venue, their concrete ain't the same color as my concrete. And it has to do with what is locally available. So it's not all exactly the same. So all I could say is get in touch with me, and we could work on it that way. Will I have more stands in time for Christmas? Oh, I don't know. That's a good reason for me to call my son. Let me call him and let me see what's going on. Debbie says there are 3 or 4 Puritans on eBay right now. You can get some good deals on them. The only thing you have to watch out for is if the grippers are worn out. And it could be 20, 30 years old, and the grippers are going to be just fine. It's how big of a rug did that rug hooker hook? Because my grippers did not give out until I started doing my room size rug. And I always put the weight on the right-hand side, right? So I can get my left arm underneath. And that gripper, it's kind of like if you take cardboard and you bend it and you bend it and you bend it and you bend it and you bend it, and then it turns into almost like fabric. It's no longer cardboard. It's no longer hard. That's what happens to your grippers, and then it won't stay in that channel. I don't think anything ever happens to the metal part. The metal part, I mean, they can get clogged as all get out. I purposely do not clean mine. And you can probably almost not see the blue. Let me see if I can get this without focusing on my face. Come on. Trouble is I can't see through there. There we go. See how full they are? I never clean them. Ever. Partly, I was a bit traumatized. I went to solder. I had been hooking for 2 weeks. Got a frame because I broke 3 quilting hoops. Had a little temper tantrum with that, but that's a whole nother story. Got my frame, went to solder. I was so brand new that I didn't have a single thread in my grippers. And it was like, darn it, I am not taking the threads out. I earned every one of those threads. And to me, it doesn't change how it grips at all. Of course, if you feel like it's not gripping, then clean them out. But for me, it's never hurt the gripping. Patricia's saying, I'm kicking myself. I sold a Puritan frame for $50 a few years ago. Well, maybe you can look around and find one. I'm curious on why you sold it. But I think it's one of the best frames. It's a workhorse. It's a workhorse. They're ugly as all get out. I hate that turquoise blue. I actually had one where I had to replace the grippers. And they're relatively easy to replace. You just slide the grippers out of the channel. And then I unscrewed this aluminum channel and took it off. And then that was enough that allowed me to paint the rest of it. And so I do have one that's kind of an olive green. Makes me real happy. Heather is saying, do you always wash your wool before you marry it with other wools? No, what's the point? Unless you don't know where that wool came from. I always wash wool that I don't know where it comes from. If it's coming from a source, it could have wool moths in it. It ain't coming anywhere near any of my other babies. I wash it first. But otherwise, there's no need to wash it. Donna is saying, I would staple or tack in between the loops, not tacking all the way in. Linda says, when you wash your wool, what kind of soap do you use? I have a front loader, so do I. I just use whatever. I think I use Era because it's cheap. I use Era. I just make sure it does not have a bleach additive, because we test wool by putting it into bleach, and if it dissolves, yes, dissolves completely, goes away, then it's wool. So you don't want bleach anywhere near your wool, because it won't dissolve it, because it's not strong enough, because you got the water from the washing machine and all that kind of stuff. But it will weaken the fibers. So just make sure it doesn't have. And I put it in the washer. I'll put a couple blue jeans in there. Whatever is okay with getting a little wool lint on it, and to me, blue jeans are fine with that because it doesn't stick. Thanks, Noof. Should a relatively new hooker intentionally create a stash or just purchase wools for new projects? I recommend starting slow. Do not expect to get a stash like this. I was a couple years into it, and I had 6 of these little squares, only partial, only filled up maybe this high on each shelf. The reason for that is when you start out, you don't know what you like. You don't know. And you could be spending a whole lot of money for something that someone says, this is the best, and you don't like it. Okay? Until you know that person who's saying this is the best, I wouldn't buy a bunch. But if you have someone that you've learned you have the similar taste with, and they recommend it, then you could go ahead and do it. Like, I have several people, I have certain wools that I recommend all new rug cookers should get. One is Y002. It's a yellow that you can use anywhere. N042, which is a black. It's a reversible. It's like charcoal on one side, much blacker on the other, but it's still not solid black. Every rug cooker should have that in their stash. G052. What is it called now? Guacamole. You got to have guacamole, right? I mean, that's my favorite grain. So there's certain things that I think people can use universally. And the only reason I know that is because I've suggested them for student rugs. They've hooked them. They've liked them. So they're like student tested colors. Paula, she don't want to miss out. She says, I got on a little while ago. Did I hear something happening on Monday? Yes, on Monday, I'm going to be hosting a graphic lesson. It's going to be $59, 2 hours, Monday at 4 o'clock. And I don't even have a place for you to sign up and pay me for it yet. But if you're on the wait list, you will get an email for that. And Paula, I don't know if you're the Paula who usually comes to the hook-ins, but send me an email and I'll add you, because I don't have a Paula T on the wait list. So if you're interested, and there'll be more information than when you sign up. David's got a tip. He says, if your gripper teeth get bent, you can take an empty mechanical pencil and slip over the teeth and straighten them. And what it'll do is it'll save your skin. Honest to God, because if they get a wild hair in your grippers, it'll scratch you so much easier, and that is the easiest way for the bent. That's what that word meant. Bent teeth. And you can fix that and do that. Mary says, I also have my original Puritan and never cleaned the grippers. 25 years on a buzz stand. I'm not sure what a buzz stand is, but yeah, mine's 21 years, going on 22. Andrea says, hubby has made me Dan Fitzpatrick style frames and drilled holes in back to sew through the rug. The thread is then knotted on the back of the frame, so easy to remove if needed. Yeah, I think she's talking about a Chuddy Cap style frame. Carol says, how can I get on Monday's class? Carol, are you? Yeah, Carol, you're not on the wait list either. So send me an email and say you want to be on the wait list. I will be offering this again. I just want to do a prototype and see how this works. Janice says, is there a way to decide what size yarn or wool strips to use on a design? I have found I don't like thick yarns or strips. Well, first off, if you don't like thick yarns or strips, don't hook with them. Stay with where your comfort zone is, regardless of what everyone around you is doing, right? You are the only person you need to make happy with this. And if you have to, tell them I said so, okay? If you only like what narrow cut, and some of my best friends are only narrow cut hookers, right? They only hook with yarn, or they only hook with very fine cut strips. You can get a lot more detail that way. Don't apologize or don't feel like you're not doing it right if you're not using thick. But as far as how to decide what strip size to use, I talked about this the other day, and I don't know where that paperwork's put away, but I had a PDF printout that you can print out, or you can just take several strips that are cut in different sizes and lay them on your pattern. Does it look like it's going to fit? If it doesn't, go down until they fit. Janine said, I would love to hear how you started rug cooking. How much time do we have? It's 5 o'clock. I was basically watching TV, and it was a show called Home Matters. I don't remember the name of the host. She was a past Miss America or something along that line. And they would do a cooking segment, a craft segment, like a decorating segment. You know, it was that kind of thing. And I was doing a Thomas Kincaid cross stitch. And I had just realized that I had messed up. And I didn't know how much I was going to have to rip out to get it right, you know. And taking out conned cross stitch is just as hard as putting it in. It's not like rug hooking, right? Where we just, it goes. So I took a big sigh, set it down, watched the end of the segment. The very next segment coming up was about rug hooking. And I had never been exposed to hooked rugs before. I didn't have a mother or a grandmother who rug hooked. I had never seen a hooked rug, or at least seen it and known what it was, right? So I learned from books. I took out the entire section of the Toledo downtown library. My grandson used to call it the underground library, because when they remodeled it, you have to like go down a hill and you park below ground level. And so we would go to the underground library, and I took out the entire section. I think the code is 746 point something or other. I took out that entire section, and how I got it all up to the counter. And this is a huge library. I got it all up to the counter. I could not lift it to get it from the counter to my car. I had to do it in 2 trips. But there must have been some adrenaline going, because I got that all the way from the back of the library all the way up to the front checkout counter. And then from there, took me an embarrassing long amount of time to figure out from the bibliographies that there was a rug hooking magazine. Got the magazine, was told I was checking out on a Monday. He says, tomorrow's Tuesday. Tomorrow the new issue comes out. So I said, okay, I'll come back. And I live in Pemberville. This was in Toledo. So I had to drive all the way back to Toledo the next day, get that little magazine, opened it up, and in that second magazine, and it gives me chill bumps every time I think about it, was a feature that Rug Hooking Magazine calls The Loop. And they list people who are looking for people in their area. And there was a woman there named Liz, and she was in Sylvania. Well, if Toledo is here, down here is Pemberville. Over there in the northwest is Sylvania. So it was I think it's about 40 miles, but it was like, that's close enough. So I drove over, met with them. They told me where to get supplies, which was, of course, an hour to the south. I don't know if I went that day or if I went the next day, and got supplies and started hooking, made 3 little chair pads, and I haven't looked back since. It's been a wild ride, that's for sure. Jess says, waiting until you know what you like doesn't just go for buying wools. I have an octagon swivel frame that is okay, but my favorite is a simple wood frame that my husband built. Interesting. Yeah, that's for sure. And hooks are the same way. Try them whenever you can. And Jess, I'd be curious to know if the octagon frame is a Needleworks. Is it the Needleworks floor stand? Because if it is, that's the one I recommend. And someone who needs a frame needs to get in touch with Jess, and maybe we can liquidate that for you, Jess, and get you some more wool. She says, try before you buy whenever possible for frames and hooks. Yes. Andrea says, no, I'm talking about box frames to frame the rug. The only time I framed a rug is I did a portrait of my husband that I call the General. And it's in an antique frame, but it's not part, how can I say this? That lesson that's a whole nother lesson. I need to write that one down because that's a good lesson. I basically finished that as a mat and tacked it into the space in the frame. And that worked. Yeah, she says Deanne calls them contemporary box frames. Yeah, if they're the little ones that she sells, well, I guess you can get them bigger, but the ones that she sells, paint them all the way, please. Because they have a place in the center that's not painted. Your wood that touches your wool should be painted. Put another coat of paint on those things. Gwen says, I hooked the word joy and used Prati for the O to look like a wreath. Do I still steam the rug? How do I steam Prati? O that is about 1 inch taller than the rest of the rug. You can steam everywhere else. What happens ideally is you steam it first and then you put the Prati in. But that's water over the dam. So I would steam what you can. The main thing is to relax the rug and make sure those diagonals match so that your rug is nice and straight and it's not like this or like this. Okay. Doreen has said, is there a best thickness of wool for use for a newbie rug hooker? I start with all my new people on a 6. That's where I recommend. Then they can venture up and they can venture down and figure out where they like to be. A number 6 is easier on the body. It doesn't take as much oomph to get technique to get the loop up. If you're struggling with the thicker loops, go down and cut size. They're easier to pull. A number 3, you can pull up with your eyes closed because it doesn't matter if you twist it because it's so thin. Okay. I think I'm done. Oops. Jess says, sending you an email with a link to the frame that is either exactly what I have or just a different brand, but the same. Okay. So, what other questions do you guys have while I call up my email program and see if the email is there? So I got Magbus, I got Debbie Wharton, and I got Carol, who are all new for the graphics wait list. But I don't see an email from Jess yet. So we'll have to put that on the back burner. Okay, guys, thanks for being here. I really appreciate you being here. Tomorrow is what? Tomorrow must be Saturday because today is Friday. Tomorrow is a hook-in. So if you haven't been to one, they're great fun. You can come very low, very informal. It's not a lesson, but people ask questions, and I'll answer questions when I can. I just sometimes it might be, that's a good question, I'm going to do that for Tuesday's lesson, kind of an answer. But it's a lot of camaraderie. We learned who lives in Louisiana and who we pray for during hurricanes. We've got people all the Canadians who come. There's a big contingent of Canadians, that kind of thing. I hope you'll join me. It's real easy. The first time is your hardest. If you are stuck and you want some help, I will help you. All you have to do is reach out, okay? And we just need to install the app. I can walk you over the phone on that. We'll get you into the platform. I'll give you a quick walk around on how Zoom works, and you'll be right up to speed with everybody else. So don't sit home alone. Come hook with us. It's a lot of fun. Here's a good point. Donna says, I would use a medium weight, not coat or blanket weight. Yeah, the ideal rug hooking wool is 14 ounces per yard. Okay, that's it. And I got a testimony here from Diana, and she says it's a fun time. She's there every time for both of them, for the Hook In with me and the Hook In with Kim on Wednesday. And you can get to all of that on my webpage, both of them at CindyGayRugHooking.com and HowToRugHook.com. I've got a little thing right at the top. Let me get back up here, click over here to the homepage. And right there, it says Friday lesson, 4 o'clock at YouTube. Ideally, around 5 o'clock, which it's not quite past 5 yet. This will change to the link for Saturday. So, like I said, I just programmed that today. So I'm not sure if that's going to work. I'm waiting for my clock to say 5:01 before I give up on it. Come on, what did I do? I popped in right at the top of the minute. Come on, I want to see this flip. So it's still saying Friday. Still says Friday. It's 5:01. It still says Friday. Okay, I'll have to look at the time that I got programmed in. I thought it was 5 o'clock. Maybe I did 6. I don't know. But the whole idea is I wanted to wait until this one was over, because right now if someone lands on the website, they could click here and they could come to this lesson now. But this will change, and the information that you need for tomorrow will be right there. And the hook-ins are public. They're open to the public. You're welcome to come in. There's no charge for them. There is a charge on Tuesday for the office hours, but that's free for the members of the Rug Hooking Journey. And they have a private link that they can join. But the link on Tuesday will get you to the YouTube where you can just watch it. You can't ask questions, but you can watch it. So that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Your continued support and always being here every week means the world to me. And someday we need to do like I'm going to do a big hook in here, because I got a big old barn back there, right, with concrete drying. And we can do it in the barn if we have to, if it's not totally filled up by then. But fingers crossed, someday there'll be a hook in, and maybe you all can come and we can meet each other in person and actually give each other a real hug. So that's it, guys. I will see you tomorrow at the hook in. That's it. Bye for now.